Destiny Exposure Summit. I am Dr. Marcia. I'm the host and visionary, also your master destiny life coach. And I want to bring to the stage the next speaker for this amazing summit. The speakers have been awesome. But coming to the stage next is Natalie Demerson-Watkins. And Natalie is the founder and CEO of Anchored Life Academy and the creator of Voice of the Womb. And she is a resiliency coach, and she specifically is speaking to women who are dealing with miscarriage and newborn loss. Natalie finds great joy in leading people through into positive change through her special gifts to encourage, empower, and inspire others. The Anchored Life Academy and Voice of the Womb were birthed out of Natalie's desire to not only share her personal story of recurring miscarriage and newborn loss, but also to guide other women through the healing journey of this silent topic. She has a story that is sure to not only touch your heart, but also to inspire you to see yourself, realize your blessings, and overcome any storm that comes your way. I'm bringing Natalie Demerson-Watkins to the stage. Welcome, Natalie Demerson-Watkins. How are you today?
Hello, Dr. Marcia. I am doing wonderfully well. Thank you so much for inviting me to share this stage with you. I'm just glad to be here.
It has been a pleasure, and I know you have an amazing story to share, and I'm going to call it a transformation. But before we get into that, can you just share with the audience, just say your name and what it is that you do?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Demerson-Watkins, and I help women transform their lives after miscarriage and newborn loss. I call myself a life and health transformational coach.
I love that, and but you mentioned a word. You said miscarriage and newborn loss, and those both of those words are filled with so much emotion, and I know there's a story behind it. Can you share your story around miscarriage?
Sure, it has not been easy, I will say that, but I know that it is a calling and an assignment based off of my personal experience of miscarriage and newborn loss. So if you want me to just go into kind of what happened and how did I get to where I am, it all started really when I married my high school sweetheart. After 7 years of dating, we finally got married, had actually planned our life to have 3 children, 3 years apart. And actually, we did. I mean, we started in 2009 with my wonderful, amazing son who is 14. We had Roderick Jr. With no problems. And so really the third year came, that third year, that 2012, it was go time really to execute our plan. And in 2012, that's when the journey for me with miscarriage happened. So in 2012, had a miscarriage after 5 months of pregnancy, had to deliver my baby, didn't really know what miscarriage was and what to expect, thought it was really a pill that I could take and everything would dissolve, but learned that I had to deliver my baby, 12 hours of labor, going through that emotional roller coaster of knowing that I'm about to deliver a baby who's not living. So I went through that whole journey, and really, I'm a woman of faith. So the Lord really taught me a lot of things about obedience and surrender, and learning that I am not in control, because I was a control freak. I'm going to tell you that, and I have to certainly put myself back in the space of surrender, because it's just natural to want to take control, but I learned that lesson on waiting on the Lord. And so in 2014, we tried again. And really, I waited for a sign, asked the Lord, okay, just let me know when it's time. 2014, got pregnant and was heartbroken by another miscarriage. And this one was after 6 weeks. And at this point, learning, more things about what a miscarriage is, I had to have what they call a D&C, where it's a suctioning of the baby. So really was heartbroken with that, and didn't understand why, because I felt like I waited on the Lord. I asked him for a sign and he gave it to me. In 2015, though, we tried again after learning that there was a malformation of my uterus. My uterus is actually heart-shaped, which was pretty cool to me. But I said, well, I had a baby in 2009 with no problems. So I knew that I could have a baby. So, after talking to my medical professionals and getting some things done, we tried again. And in 2015, we had a baby. And actually, at 24 weeks, I started having some symptoms of preeclampsia and, high blood pressure, all those things that come with preeclampsia, in which it was not related to any of the miscarriages that I had ever had. So this was something new. But at 26 weeks, we had to have our baby girl, Rosalind Grace, who I named her Grace because it was nothing but the grace of God that blessed us to see her face living and thriving in the NICU. After 14 days, she passed away. And that was the total time, I think, of my transformation process that I teach in my coaching program. Went through this whole phase of shattering, really starting from ground zero, rebuilding myself in my faith, in my confidence, in who I am. And so I went through this whole process and finally reconciled my faith in God, who I am as a woman, what my purpose is. And I'm going to tell you, though, it was a journey. I say it very quickly now, but it was a journey, really a span of about 4 years, really trying to work through that process of loss. And finally, in 2019, we decided, okay, it's time to try again. And at this point, it was me just kicking that fear in the face and saying, you know what? However this turns out, I know that God can bring me through, because he's done it before. And if he did it before, he can certainly do it again. So we tried again, and I had a miscarriage. And this time I had one at home. Never had a miscarriage at home and had to go to the ER and that whole process. But I'll tell you this, I knew that I was to write a book about this journey, because, of course, everything that we go through is for a purpose. And I knew that if it wasn't good, then it wasn't God, and God was not finished. And in last year, it's when I launched Anchored Life Academy and my program Voice of the Womb, with really hopes of really helping women to go through this process of grief and then resiliency, finding that reconciliation in that grief. So that's a little bit about my story and why I have decided to do what I'm doing now. It's because it's where I've been, and I want to help women get through the process.
Yeah, Natalie, thank you so much for taking us through that journey. And as I was listening, and you even said, you came through it, you said it um, in a way that was maybe, I mean, you moved through it, but that's a sign that you have healed from it. It's still a part of you. It still hurts some, but you have moved through it. I know as women, there are a lot of feelings, there are a lot of emotions, and you may have walked through it with us here because that's a sign that you're healed. But there are a lot of emotions. Can you walk us through what some of those emotions that women are facing when they are dealing with miscarriage and newborn loss?
Certainly, Dr. Marcia. I'll tell you, the emotional trauma is something um, to be considered. I went through a lot of fear, especially when it was time to try again and decide if I wanted to try again because I was hanging on to the last loss. I had feelings of even feeling inadequate as a woman. Because as a woman, you feel like you were created to be able to have a baby. And so it weighs on you emotionally, on your worth and on your confidence as a woman, right? So it also the emotional response that I had actually when I went to the doctor to find that there was no heartbeat. That was the most lonely time of my life. Number one, I was by myself. My husband had just started a new job. When they told me they couldn't find a heartbeat, I called my sister, who is my ride or die. I called my dad. No one would answer the phone. So I just remember feeling lonely in that moment. And then I was afraid because I didn't know what was next. But then after the loss, and actually I'll even go during the labor of my first miscarriage. Like I said before, it was like a roller coaster. So there were times when I was just grateful that my family was with me, and then I would just burst into tears because I knew what the outcome was already. And I couldn't believe that, number one, in my mind, I had been a good girl my whole life. I had waited to get married before having sex and starting my life. I felt like I did everything right. And then I was faced with loss after loss. And I'll tell you this, what I've learned is that it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. Someone I heard yesterday say they don't believe the universe gives you cards that you can't handle, or that deals you cards that you can't face or fight. So I feel like I'm strong enough I was strong enough to take on this type of pain and trauma because God knew that I was strong enough to help some other women through. So that emotion, I had to go there because I can't help a woman to get from where she is if I've never felt that.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of time, I've learned that my identity is not wrapped in what I've gone through. My worth is not based on how good or bad or how much suffering or how much privilege. It's not wrapped up in those things. But those are just some of the emotions that I faced in the journey and as I've been walking through, because every day is healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is good. So even though you've had a lot of loss, you now have the skills and the know-how to be able to help others to move through their loss and get to the next. And can you share? I know you have the anchored life, right? And you also have the voice of the womb, which is your signature program, correct?
That's right.
Can
Yes.
you share a little bit about that program and how you help women?
Sure. So in Voice of the Womb, as I told you, I have the framework because I was my first client. I went through it, and really, I'm going to say that I believe that it was divine, the way that God revealed the process to me of the shattering, the rebuilding, and the reconciliation. And so in my signature program, Voice of the Womb, that's what we teach. We go from where you are now, the shattering, to where do you want to be, the rebuilding, and then how do you get there, the reconciliation. So I am just in love with the process. I'll tell you, sometimes we shy away from the process, but it's in the process that we gain the strength, that we gain the knowledge and the wisdom and the story. It comes from the process. So I take women on that journey through the process so that ultimately they can come to a place where they can tell their story, not from a place of pain and loss per se, but from a place of purpose, of resiliency, and of overcoming.
Yeah, yeah, the process. There's something that says, I think it's a meme that says the process is the process, right? The
Period.
process is the process, and if you what do you shortchange the process, you never get through the process. And so I want you, Natalie, if you can. I don't know if you have some like an excerpt from one of your resources that you could just kind of share with us. What's part of the process?
Part of the process is taking an introspective look at me. Dr. Marcia, during this time, I had to make a decision that I had nothing to prove to anybody. Okay? Now, one thing, sometimes we feel like we have to conquer this thing that has overtaken us so many times. Oh, I have to conquer this. But I had to ask myself a tough question. Okay? Why do you want to have another baby? I'm going to tell you, it was a hard question. Do you want to have another baby because you're a woman and you're supposed to have another baby because of what society has told you? Because of the expectations of your husband, right? Because you want your son to have a sibling? I had to ask myself those hard questions. And that was the first part, is having a look within. And then I think for me, the process also happened with me bringing my husband into the conversation and us getting on the same page to, like, what do we want? And what do we believe? That's another thing. You have to be sure of what you believe. And I'll tell you, faith had a big part in my process. What do I believe about God? What do I believe about his faithfulness? What do I believe about my place in this world? So I had to figure out, okay, what do I believe? And then where am I going from here? So even in going through that process, well, then I had to make sure that I forgave. I was mad at God for a long time because I couldn't control this circumstance, the outcome. So I had to walk in forgiveness with my God. I had to walk in forgiveness with my medical professionals because there were times when I thought that they could have done more or that they did a disservice. I had to walk in forgiveness, even, I'll tell you this, Dr. Marcia, with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Because even during the grief process, we were both grieving and we didn't know how to be there for each other because we were both feeling the pain. And so there were times when we had to have hard conversations. But then we had to realize, okay, this is a tactic to separate us in our relationship. So now that we understand we're both hurting, how can I be there for you? How can you be here for me? Maybe you just need a little space. So it's understanding how people grieve and how people process so that you can best be there for them. That was part of my process. And not being afraid to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be clear with other people. This is how you can support me.
Yes.
Maybe you can just leave me alone. Give
Mm-hmm.
me space. Or maybe you can come and let's talk. So those were just some of the, I think, milestones in my process and in the journey of getting to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it was key about your spouse. And I know lots of couples who go through any kind of trauma, whether it is losing a newborn, losing, having miscarriage, losing a grown child, or a toddler, whatever, that causes unrest in amongst the relationship, and many couples separate. And so I applaud you for staying in the game, if you will, for having those hard conversations. Because what you said is that you're both hurting, and
Yes.
nobody has gone to school on how to, they don't know how to grieve the loss of a child until now. Okay, because now we have Natalie who has gone through that process, and and you can help those that are going through that. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to go to ground zero and try to figure it out by yourself. There are folks who are here to help. So with that, Natalie, can you share if someone has lost a newborn, if they have had miscarriages? And I will share that my very first pregnancy was a miscarriage, and those emotions they're kind of like they are you're crying, or they're right underneath the surface, and it just takes seeing a baby carriage, okay,
Yeah.
hearing a baby cry, even seeing the little sticker on the back of the minivan that with all the family members, or that sign that says baby on board. Okay,
Yeah.
we get triggered, and then it causes it's a sign that we're not healed. So what's the contact information? How do they reach you?
Yes. Dr. Marcia, you can reach me at anchoredlifeacademy.com. That is our website. And also, I'm in these social media streets. So we have Facebook, we have Instagram, Anchored Life Academy. My name is Natalie Demerson-Watkins, and I'm available to women. I was actually in Verizon. If you see me walking in the street, let's talk. I was in Verizon today, and I met a woman who we just started connecting, and she started to tell me more about her story. So people can find me, especially if you know that you need someone to help you walk through a journey that maybe you don't feel free to speak about because you've learned how to suppress it and continue on working, or because you just don't have that space to be able to speak about grief and loss. That's what I do, and that's how women can find me: social media or website, or you can find me in Verizon.
I love that. Thank you so much for bringing this very important topic to the forefront. Thank you for not stopping, okay, and taking this on, because it's a hard thing for you. It's personal, but it's personal for every woman who has gone through this. So thank you again, Natalie, for being on the summit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marcia.
And that was Natalie Demerson-Watkins with this powerful story of triumph over trials. And if that is you, if you need help with I'm going to say your trauma, okay, your loss, please reach out to her and tap into her resources so that you can heal, and then you can go on and do the next thing that you have been called here to do. So I am Dr. Marcia, and I am your Master Destiny Life Coach. And I'm also the host and visionary of the Destiny Exposure Summit, where speakers tell their story, they touch their tribe, and they expand their territory. Stay tuned for more.